Hi, I'm Steve Peluso, and I'm here at Peluso Precision Automotive, 93 Blackstone Street in Mendon, Mass. And my specialty is fixing vintage cars. And I've been doing this quite a long time. This is a 1948 Ford Super Deluxe Coupe. Now, the reason why it's a coupe is it has small back windows. And if you can see over here, this back window is very small. If it was a two-door sedan, the roof line would be out here and it would have a bigger back window. Some of these cars were called business coupes because they had no back seat, and that way the salesman could use it as a shelf, and he also had a bigger trunk. Now this is a Super Deluxe, so this is the top of the line of the 48 Ford. It's got a flathead V8 engine. 3-speed manual transmission because there were no automatic transmissions in a Ford until 1951. This is a rust-free car from Arizona, and it's very, very nice condition. It's not a show car, but it's a very presentable driver. You want to go for a ride? Let's go for a ride. It's a 48 Ford Super Deluxe. It's a very rare car. It's the last year of this body style, which this body style came out in 1941, and they made it 41, 42, and then in 1942, automotive production ceased because of World War II. And then in 1946, they came back with the pre-war design cars, and they used this car until 48. Now, Edsel Ford, Henry Ford's son, and remember that name, Edsel Ford. Edsel Ford, Henry Ford's son, wanted to make a newer car, but Henry Ford was really stubborn, and he didn't like to change, so he kept the same car, and then all the other car manufacturers came out with a post-war car right in 1946, or well, not really true, but they carried them a little bit, but people were beating Ford in sales. So in 1949, Ford came out with their totally new car, which looked nothing like this, and they picked their sales back up. Okay, so here's a clock, here's a radio, and this is an aftermarket radio that was put in by somebody else. Here's the heater controls, here's the lighter, and here's the choke. Now, this car has a carburetor, and later cars had an automatic choke. This has a manual choke. And on the other side of the steering wheel, you have another lever, which is the throttle, which is just like you held your foot on the gas pedal, so you could raise your idle up a little bit. So you use the choke and the throttle, and then we got wipers, and we got a starter, we got a horn. Oh, key has to be on for the... And then we have 4 gauges here: fuel gauge, oil pressure, battery, temperature, and the speedometer. We have 2 ashtrays, because everybody smoked back then. And we had air conditioning. It really wasn't air conditioning, but if you look at the front, that was called the cowl vent. So you know how later cars had vents down here? Well, these earlier cars had this cowl vent. And if you open that cowl vent and you open these vent windows, you had a good circulation of air, so it actually kept the car kind of cool in a hot weather. When you were moving, of course, you had to be moving. This has what's called a flathead V8. Here's your cylinder heads. And on later cars, the valves were inside the head. On this car, the valves were in the block. Now, Ford used this particular engine until 1953. In 1954, they came out with an overhead valve engine. Now, the other thing here is this has a regular 12-volt battery. This car was made with a 6-volt system, but it's been upgraded to 12-volt, and it's got an alternator instead of a generator to make it charge more efficiently. It's got an optional backup light, which was a pretty rare option, and you see right on the top of the light it says Ford right on it. It's could be worth between $10,000 and $25,000, depending on the condition. This one is for sale for $18,500. Our best offer, of course. Super Deluxe 8. Now, some of these cars came with 6-cylinder engines, but most of them had 8 cylinders. In Massachusetts, with the weather, you want to keep the car in the garage. You don't want it exposed to elements. If we were in California, it wouldn't be so much of a problem. But with a car, these cars, they're better off when you put them away and keep them in a garage because they don't deteriorate.